Well, hello everybody. Our first community chat, very exciting. And so I think Michael will give a short overview first.
Sure, yeah, and just wanted to say welcome to everyone and thanks so much for taking time to join us today. We just want to very briefly share a little bit of context about these calls. And we're really trying to do these on a regular basis, and we'll be doing that for the next few months and few years. And really it's just a chance to kind of bring together the platform co-op community and have you guys learn about different projects and even think about ways to connect and collaborate on different work that's going on around the US and around the world. So we hope that this is inspiring for you and a good chance to learn about what people are working on. And we also want to use these calls to give updates on the Platform Co-op Development Kit, which some of you may know about, and I'll share some more links in the chat feature in just a little bit. But also to kind of give you guys an update on that work and the progress we're making with the wonderful colleagues we have at the Inclusive Design Research Center. I see a few of them are on the call today. And so this is our very first community hangout. We'll be doing one more on November 26th, another on December 14th. November 26th, we're gonna have Mickey Metz, who's a proponent of free software from agaric.com. And on December 14th, we're gonna be hosting Nathan Schneider, who is the author of an amazing new book called Everything for Everyone. So an ambitious title and a great read. I also just wanted to quickly run through the agenda for the call today. I know a lot of people are really busy, so I think Trevor and I want these to be really impactful and concise and full of information, but probably not longer than 20 or 25 minutes. So, and that kind of depends on the Q&A section and how many questions you guys have for Ella, but we'll aim to keep it around that length, and if we go a little bit longer, great. So just to briefly run through the agenda, I will hand it over to Trevor in just a minute to give an update on our work with the Platform Co-op Development Kit. He will talk for a few minutes and then introduce Ela, who's going to talk to us about platform cooperativism in Berlin and what's going on there. Then we'll open it up for a Q&A, and please feel free to ask whatever questions you guys have, and then we'll end. So just three quick final notes I wanted to say before we get started. It would be great if everyone could keep their microphone on mute while they're not talking, just so we don't have any background interference. And I think I'm probably guilty of that right now. I think there might be some background noise coming in, but I will be on mute in just a little bit. And then if you have a question, just unmute yourself. And of course, we can have a conversation then. And then I was thinking, as a way to spare time, if everyone just wants to write like a little blurb about themselves, and what they do and what they're working on, and send it through the chat feature. That way everyone can kind of see who's on the call, who's doing what, who's where, and maybe even throw in your Twitter handle or a way to get in touch with you if you want to, just so we can kind of quickly see everyone on the call and what they're working on. And then finally, last thing before I hand it off is that we are recording these meetings and we're going to be hosting them online. So if you don't want your video online, please feel free to turn off your video. It's okay. There's no requirement there, and we won't be offended if you switch off your video and you still want to ask questions. That's totally fine. I just wanted to make you guys aware that we are going to be putting these online so you can make that call for yourself. But I think that's all I have for right now. So I will hand it over to Trevor, who will give a brief update on our work with the Platform Co-op Development Kit.
Yeah. So hi, everybody. Really nice to see some of your faces and the presence of so many others. And so I think what we will do is mostly I don't want to give a great introduction to the development kit because Michael will just post some links. So if you're interested in reading more about it, you can find out more on our blog. Just briefly to say, basically, we started to work on the development kit together with the IDRC in Toronto this past July. And so we have a grant that will last until July 2020. And the idea is just very simply to make it easier to start these platform co-ops, right? And so you can find out more in the links that Micah will post right now. So let me get to the main excitement of the day, which is basically we're really happy to introduce Ela. Many of you will know her already. So she has really been at the heart of this work in Germany for quite a few years now, right, Ela? Like it's been almost 3-4 years that you've been doing this work together with Thomas Dennebrink and a few others. But really a long series of events in Berlin at Supermarkt, this space that you are curating and convening for also many years already, and now also so much activity around Art Chain Cooperative, right? So which has been the center, I think, or quite a bit of intensity of your work has been focused on that. So welcome to Ela, really lovely to have you. So I just hand it over to you and can't wait to hear what's going on in Berlin.
Yeah, thanks so much, Trevor. And I'm very pleased to be here and talk to you. And I've been thinking today how long it is since we first collaborated, and it must have been already around 10 years, right? So I remember back then when I was a program curator at the Transmediale Festival for Art and Culture in Berlin. I think I have invited you to a session that was about the way our entire notion of work would change in the near future. That was the time when we were all excited about co-working. And you have been among the few that were already warning that this could maybe turn out into something that we wouldn't like so much, that this could maybe turn out into a little bit of, you know, I don't know, self-exploitation and the state withdrawing from, you know, from responsibility. And I remember this discussion very vividly. So this is almost 10 years ago. And if I look at all the different stages of development you have been through with your research, but also we here, our team in Berlin, have been through, there are quite a lot of synchronicities. And I think it's no coincidence that the moment you announced the coming out party of the cooperative internet with the first platform co-op event in New York, I think now, I don't know, 3 years ago, was it, right? It was immediately the moment when we picked up the same topic, and not just because we are following you, no matter what you're doing, but simply because it was also the time over here in Germany where we felt, yes, this is really starting to be a discussion. So I just wanted to quickly give a little bit of a context also for our collaboration, right? Because I think this is also interesting. So just a little bit of information about myself. I basically wear different hats, as many of you do, I can imagine. So on the one hand, I'm a freelance digital strategist. That's how I have been earning my money since 20 years. I have been working with individuals and organizations in building up their digital strategy. And over the past years, I have been increasingly working with NGOs and more interesting organizations, and moved away from the industry, which felt actually really good. I've also had another leg in, let's say, in media art, in open source culture. That's also why I have been collaborating with different tech and art festivals all over the world. This is also in that context where I got to know Trevor. And I have been founding Supermarkt Berlin together with two partners, David Farin and Joel Sentemai, 8 years ago now. And Supermarkt was intended to be a space, I would say a media art space from its very beginnings. But then an interesting thing happened. You know, I really had this idea in mind that we would somehow curate the space and we would come up with a really interesting program of activities and inviting people. But then what happened was, it was exactly around the time when cloud computing and the sharing economy emerged and started to become a thing. And there was a growing group of activists and people out there that started to look into this topic and started to do research and trying to get a grasp of what that would mean to our lives and to the way we work and, you know, like basically each and every domain of us. And so they needed a space for that. And since I have always been really interested in this intersection of technology, money, and society, it was quite natural for them to approach us at Supermarkt and starting to collaborate with us. So in a sense, Supermarkt very quickly was taken over by communities such as WeShare. So Thomas, he is probably my closest collaborator in this entire platform co-op community. He's a WeShare connector, and he brought other people with him, and then they brought groups. So we've hosted the European freelance rights movements. We've hosted the interns rights movements, all sorts of movements and groups of people that have been emerging. And during these 8 years of Supermarkt, we have also come across a lot of different, let's say, technology hypes, right? Of course, the cloud computing thing, the sharing economy, Web 3.0, Industry 4.0, all these sorts of things. And of course, no matter from what perspective we looked at it, there was each of them really started to shift. Also, economy shifted the way people work together. And then I would say lately, of course, one of the topics we've been looking into were blockchain technologies. So when we started off with the platform co-op events here in Berlin, that was due to the fact that we felt that we are in a state of transition right now, where a lot of people start to understand that platform monopolists are actually not only a threat for our personal data, not only a threat for the competitiveness on the market, but ultimately a threat to democracy. And this is also what we here in Berlin, on this peaceful island where we hardly had any problems because the rent were cheap and artists could manage to live here really well. Then all of a sudden it became very clear, no, this is not going to continue like that. Things are tremendously changing. And we are currently in the midst of that shift. So what we've done, we looked into platform co-ops at a really early stage. I think Vermondo, Felix Wedt, a good friend of ours, he was probably the first one who came up with a claim, okay, now we take the traditional co-op model, we connect it to the digital ecosystem, and that's not enough. No, we want to challenge Amazon and eBay and so forth. So that was super inspiring, I have to say. And even though we all know that it's not that easy, and these guys are really doing a great job while really struggling at the same time, it's been super inspiring. And there are others. There's Resonate. It's an Irish co-op based in Berlin as well. It's a music streaming collective. You all know. I guess you all know these examples. But there are also other platform co-ops emerging, like almost on a monthly basis. So what we did was to gather them in our space, allowing them to get together on a regular basis, exchanging learnings, talking about what it actually takes to found a cooperative in Germany and all of that. So that is basically how this movement, and I have to be really honest, it's not that this movement would be super big. We are actually talking about maybe almost 20 projects that really I would subsumize under the title platform co-ops, but nonetheless, each of them are super interesting and inspiring. And we are also talking about a lot of traditional co-ops that are currently on the verge of feel the need of connecting to the digital sphere. So we've organized conferences, ran all sorts of events, and lately we've also engaged in policy work. And I think that is also interesting. And Trevor, he really made that, he created this sort of bridge into big politics in Berlin when he got invited by Andrea Nahles, the leader of the Socialist Party in Berlin. And he took our entire group with him and said, okay, let's take the opportunity to talk to her. And we came up with a position paper that we presented then. And we got approached from all sorts of parties and people that try to hear that want to hear our opinion, try to get a better understanding of what it is that we are actually working on. And yeah, so we try to lobby for better recognition of platform co-ops. We try to lobby for changes in the jurisdiction, and of course for increasing funding opportunities, because there are hardly any over here. So that's basically what we do with platform co-ops. And yeah, if Thomas would be with me, he could, maybe he's in the call, I don't know, he could maybe add many more. But our basic interest is, I would say, how can platform co-ops really work together, what it is that really leads to good co-op governance, and how can we take all these learnings into the digital realm. And probably it were exactly these questions that led Peter Harris from Resonate, also a good friend, to proposing that I should get in touch with the people from Archain. Archain is a blockchain cooperative. They are based in Seattle. So what they're trying to do is to build a blockchain technology that is open source, and where basically everyone can make use of the technology and build on it. It's quite a powerful technology. When it will be finished, it's still in the test phase. Mainnet is supposed to be launched by the first quarter of 2019. And it's built on an entirely new calculus. It's called the row calculus. That's also where the name Archain comes from. And what this row calculus can do, and the row lang, that's the programming language behind, that can actually allow for concurrent streams of computing rather than sequential one. They have a huge transaction rate, and they're currently doing their best to survive some severe financial issues they are having. And along with financial issues, also governance issues within the co-op. And this is a critical moment for Archain now. And also for us here, we have founded Archain Europe as not only the European arm of Archain, but as an autonomous organization that is really looking into questions of decentralized governance, distributed governance, and looking into real-world examples of where that actually is needed. And not approaching it so much from a tool perspective, but rather a perspective of human behavior and human needs. So that's what our team has been doing research on. Archain Europe exists as a Genossenschaft only since a couple of weeks. So this is all very early days. We are operating on a small budget, and we are currently building up research networks with partners in order to get more money into the co-op. And while we are doing that, there's a lot of learning that can be taken out of that. It's like the learning curve is extremely steep, especially when it comes to all those notions of collective ownership and governance. Yeah, that's actually where I currently stand, and I'm just curious to hear your questions.
Cool. Thank you so much, Ela. And maybe right now we can open it up for questions. And I know it might be a little bit bananas with 27 people on the call, but if someone wants to unmute themselves and give it a go, please feel free to ask Ela a question, and we can get started with the Q&As.
Hi, I would like to hear more about the governance progress, or just the evolution of how the cooperative governance is being articulated, especially with the offline. So maybe the existing cooperatives and the sort of the newer ones. I work in placemaking, digital placemaking, and now am focused on participatory budgeting here in New York, or with the PB project. And so I have a general interest in bottom-up, community-centered organizing, and looking for an appropriate place to potentially start a co-op type organization to promote this work, to organize the organizers who are doing this work. So I'm very focused on, or interested in, governance questions and advice.
Yeah, that's I mean that's the core question, right? And this is, I have to tell you that I mean, it's just coming up with good governance for a co-op is already a challenge in itself, and then taking that challenge and putting it to the blockchain space is another one, right? Because that's even more challenging, I would say, because there are also other governance issues involved. what I think is that our understanding of governance, of creating frameworks that allow for participation and expression of wish, expression of will in different communities is also something that is currently shifting, because we realize that work environments are changing. The way people want to interact or can interact is changing. I mean, look at this talk now. Look at how we get together through this technology, right? So there are so many things that are currently in flux that I don't have the feeling that I can give any particular answers of you know, what a best practice governance model might be. But it's rather on the contrary. I have to tell you, the more I look into it, the more I realize what we still need to tackle and what we still need to learn in terms of people's needs, of communities' needs, and how many things we actually need to take into account in order to create good governance. For me, it really comes down to the question of, do we have a common understanding of a common goal? Are we all sure about that? And I think this is really something that very often, and I've seen that with our chain, you think that people they all share the same goal, but then you figure out that everyone has a different perspective on things, you know?
I just want to say one thing here, you know, so like, you know, so much of a lot of this talk in civic tech and in placemaking, and also with blockchain, you know, like there's a sort of presumed universality, but you know, America is a generally right-wing neoliberal empire, right? So a lot of the things that are coming out of the United States are tilted with a libertarian sort of right-wing orientation, especially things like how the way blockchain is being adopted here and who's behind the basic ideas behind blockchain are essentially embedded, you know, right-wing ideologies, versus say platform cooperativism, which is coming from a very different tradition, or European placemaking versus American placemaking. It has a much more socialistic tilt. So I always feel that I agree there's like this missing political conversation about the different economic and social policies behind these technical ideas that, you know, it's almost like the desire to be universal or to kind of let's all agree, I feel sometimes masking really important power conversations about, well, which type of governance and for whom are we working for? And maybe it's okay that there's a libertarian platform cooperativism, sort of a right-wing version, like, and then those of us that are really focused on the left and on a more socialistic orientation, you know, should organize separately. You know, I keep wondering this about placemaking, about civic tech, because this, I keep seeing this dilemma repeatedly.
I think I'm very much in agreement to what you say. You know, I think a lot of, you know, if I look at a lot of the current governance solutions, they all come from a place of solutionism, because, you know, it's mainly a top-down solution that someone has invented for a particular group they had in mind, right? While it can work out for specific people, it can work out for, let's say, very high-level binary tasks such as voting, right? But as soon as we really talk about human interaction and human behavior in groups, which are far more nuanced, which are far more faceted and more complex, when it's really about capturing sentiment without really expressing fully of what you particularly think about something. And it also because we can't have an opinion on each and everything because we don't fully understand the impact of each and everything, right? But we might have a certain gut feeling about things and we might like or dislike. So how to capture that, right? How to capture ambiguous things. This is something, and there we really touch down on the design of these cooperative organizations. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around how a successful design process can be led, who has to be involved, what are the instruments, what is the goal, how to facilitate such a session. But for me, it really comes down to that central question. there more questions?
Yeah, I'm a member of the R chain, and I'm not totally aware. Do you use Lumio in your decision making, or what's the sort of what happens in practice when you have votes and how you vote for candidates or stand as a candidate? Can you open up that a bit?
Yes, I think I can do that. I think it's totally fine. And thanks for asking the question. I think some groups in the co-op, but I can only talk about the US co-op now. So Lumio is, of course, is a tool that is in use. But to maybe answer your question more specifically, so there was currently the AGM, right? I don't know whether you have been part of that. As a member, you were you could have voted. So they used a system that is called NetVote, and that basically allows for binary voting. It runs quite stable, and that was the tool they used for voting on the points of the items of business. Oh, Gary says, I was part of the vote. It was great. I would be interesting to hear why you think it was great. Gary,
I have to unmute myself to actually talk. Hi. No, I thought just for the process of getting in and being able to order order the candidates for the first vote, and then each article was presented. It didn't have to be on blockchain, but the fact that it was added the element of that transparency that we're looking for. So, yeah, it wasn't anything fancy. It wasn't like I was playing a video game to vote on the cooperative. It just did the job, and it did it well. So
exactly, yeah.
I'm a happy member of our chain. So
oh, it's really nice to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I mean, it's true. It did its job. It worked well. It was stable. So that's okay. And you can't even say that of many tools that are used for political elections, right? So, yeah. Any other questions or comments or feedback you'd like to share?
I have a question. Hi, Ela.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm organizational developer and group facilitator, and yeah, I'm facing more and more like the question on helping building up platform co-ops, and I have a question around this one member, one vote principle, because like with quite some I speak, the idea of platform cooperativism is new, and there's this question, okay, we have investors already, they put quite some money in already, so how does that count? How does it count when there's been a small group of people investing already over years, and then to make this transition? Maybe it's too big of a question, but that's on my mind right now. Okay, so are you challenging the one member, one vote principle, or is your question that you think shouldn't people who invest more, shouldn't they have more votes? Or I'm not sure if I got it right. I'm sorry. The question is, how do you deal with that? Yeah, like that situation. If some have invested more and some have invested less, and what is the mechanisms? What are the mechanisms you deal, how you can deal with that? Well, in Germany, or at least in our core, but also many others, there is this, I think also in the US, there is this additional incentive, and that's the dividend system, right? So yes, you as a member, you only have one vote, no matter if you, like in Germany, you could even buy 5,000 co-op shares. That's fantastic because that adds more capital to the co-op, but it doesn't make you, it doesn't double your vote or triple them, but just you continue to have one vote, and that is important for the entire equivalent balance. I'm sorry, this word is too complicated for me. Gleichgewicht, right? So I think there can be an additional incentivation, and that is just the dividend. So those that are investing more will be rewarded with more if they feel like.
They might also reinvest that money they get out of a dividend and put it back into the co-op. It would be even better. But of course they don't have to. But I think one member, one vote, that's the universal thing for a co-op. And that's also what makes a co-op, that there isn't a group of people that becomes mightier or, you know, more powerful than others simply because they have more money, because that's exactly what we try to avoid in a co-op. Does that answer your question, Manuela?
Yes, it answered my question. I see, like, this is not the most complicated thing to figure out.
It's a really good question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where are you right now? I have to ask you, in San Francisco?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Great to see you. More questions are welcome in case people have any.
Well, Ela, maybe you can say a little bit about the types of projects that you are working with in Berlin. That would be maybe interesting. Yes. Or in Germany, right? So we, I think, submitted a list, right? Or you compiled a list of the projects. So just to give people maybe a sense of the, I don't know, you know, the feel of what this looks like in Germany.
Yeah, that's it. That's a really good idea. So we've just seen one representative of a group I'm regularly collaborating with, and that's Manuela Bosch and the Collaboration Incubator. So Manuela is based in Berlin, but is currently in San Francisco to run the first US Collaboration Incubator. So this is going to be a very, or it's a very interesting form of organizational design for change makers and people working in in the field of social transition. I don't think that it's already a co-op, but I know that Manuela is considering a cooperative as a form, but I also know she already thinks ahead of it and asks herself, what form of organization could that be? So this is also gets back to design. And then we have someone in this group from host sharing. I've spotted that in the chat. So hello. Host sharing is also based in Berlin, and it's a platform co-op. So what they are offering is hosting services as a co-op. And I think that's a wonderful, it's just a wonderful example of cooperatives that are emerging in the field of IT services. And I really hope that we'll see more of them. Other platform co-ops with whom we are collaborating closely is Smart Germany, for instance. It's a freelancer co-op that basically secure livelihood for freelancers by offering all sorts of services to them, and even offering a model that is like a fixed contract with a co-op. So this is really, it's an absolute novelty, and I think that Smart are really the first to come up with things like that. Then we have a co-op like We Change. That is a co-op that is entirely shaped around offering digital services for change makers and for smaller networks, grassroots organizations in Germany. And they are really doing an important work of providing web space, providing chat or online repositories for these groups. So I would say there are people, or that there are groups emerging on all kinds of sectors. And that is the interesting thing. It's not just that there is the tech sector or the food sector or the housing sector. No, the interesting thing is that we see platform co-ops very slowly but surely emerging in fields that we haven't really thought of before.
Ela, hi, it's Natalia. I just wanted to follow on with a question to that. You talked about in the governance space, solutionism being a danger, right? Where you are just applying something that someone else has made for a different use case. Do you see a danger of that in platform cooperativism as well, where people maybe are trying to apply the platform cooperative form to something that doesn't work? And what questions would you encourage groups to ask themselves about whether platform cooperatives are right for their purpose?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question too. You know, in the end, it all comes down to the social contract a group has and the collective goals these people are having. And I think if that is clear, and if it's clear, you know, what the level of involvements are, what, you know, how people would like to participate, if all of that is clear, then you can design an organizational form around it. I would just do it, I would do it like that, because I hear people saying, oh, a co-op would be fantastic, but they haven't actually thought it through what it means on a daily basis of running such a co-op, because it can be the most exhaustive thing if you are not aware of that, if you're not able and not willing to handle member requests, to handle general assemblies, and to just handle the fact that everyone wants to have their say. So all of this needs to be designed. And what I'm hearing in your question is some skepticism that there can be any top-down principles that can be applied to each and every situation. That's at least, you know, what I think. It's not possible. I think platform co-ops and maybe also the platform co-op toolkits can give us orientation, can come up with inspiration with particular tools even. But the ultimate form of how we want our organization to be run has to be taken on by the people themselves. And this needs to be designed from the ground up. So that's at least my opinion.
Very cozy.
So you mentioned briefly that there have been some difficulties with the finances and the governance. So what has been the sort of lessons that you have learned? Like, what would you do differently, or what Archain should have done differently to avoid those sort of mistakes?
Yeah, I think first of all, I would say keeping the funds together is something that is probably is one of the most important things. Making sure not investing too much before the technology is ready. And I think this is just a mistake that has been made, to be very honest. And also, I think my major learning, you know, was not just the financial side, because honestly, I think financial things can be worked out, right? But what can't be worked out is trust and transparency and the way, you know, you build your organization. I mean, you can make that better and better, but if trust is broken, that is a terrible thing. So for me, one of the core questions is how to really establish trust on a long-term basis. And I have also learned that through wrong decisions in the field of governance, and maybe even in the field of transparency, trust can be endangered in communities. So this is not about coming up with simply bylaws and then they are there and they will just keep on working until the end of time. No, those bylaws, those social contracts need to be revisited over and over again. And it all needs to be revisited under the question, is this still something that, that builds trust? Is this nurturing the community, or is trust being taken away? And I think that if you don't have a committee of people within your group that is very closely watching towards that, there's always the danger of distrust emerging in groups. And even though the people I know in Archain are very well-meaning, and a lot of them also turned into friends, but I have seen how easily you know, just a number of maybe not so fortunate decisions can lead to lowering of trust, let's say, and what it then needs to repair that. And yeah, that's a big learning, and we are still learning. And I think we have also learned to not just working on governance solutions, but really, you know, turning around the observation towards us as an organization and doing our homework and learning what needs to be learned. Because I think there are very smart people. We can learn that, right? And it's also not Archain alone, I have to tell you. I think each and every organization that is working on that space right now is probably encountering the same issues. It's just that probably not everyone is so outspoken about it. But my personal opinion is this is a learning journey and we all have the chance to profit from that. So we shouldn't hide behind our mistakes, but rather try to improve them and get better.
And I just want to be conscientious of everyone's time. So maybe if we have time for about one more question, and maybe someone we haven't heard from yet.
I have a question. Hi there. This is Colin Clark from the Inclusive Design Research Center, and I loved your thoughts just now on trust. And I wonder if you could speak a little bit to how you see the relationship between cooperativism and technologies like the blockchain, and in particular thinking through these issues of trust, of social contracts, and in particular, like, so what does the blockchain do for cooperatives in your mind? And is there any ambivalence of working with systems that, like, for example, our chain argues for trustless interactions amongst people on their platform? What does it mean to be trustless when we need to nurture trust? And also what happens when we model social contracts, as you call them, in a computational form as code?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is basically the question that drives me at the moment. I don't have any definite answers to that, but let me just maybe share one thought. And I think Nathan Schneider, he put that really well in one of his publications, I think, when he said, you know, the blockchain technologies and the core model is sort of fits together really nicely, because co-ops have already done a great job in coming up with models of governance and collective ownership and decentralization, right? So all the tools they came up with sort of have stood the test of time already. So a lot of what blockchain technologies are trying to achieve is inherently existing in cooperatives. But for me, it's still the question of, and then I just get back to what I said before, we could theoretically apply specific notions of governance and put that on a blockchain and just, you know, make it work in a technological sense, and still it wouldn't solve the issues of that group, because there are particular issues that this group has. There are specific needs for transparency and trust and resources and all of that. So there is no way for us to circumvent that and just, you know, take the shortcut through technology. I think what we need to understand is that we all will have to tackle a tremendous amount of complexity in the near future in order to build systems that are sustainable and that are community oriented and human centric. There's just no way of making a shortcut here. The only thing we can do is to try to create spaces for learning and try to improve our design and just tackling the task, because we just, you know, we need to do it. And there is no one out there that can say he or she knows how to do it. I'm absolutely convinced of that. This is a starting point, I feel.
I just wanted to share one thing that we've been seeing in participatory budgeting here and looking at just software use and about this governance trust question. So even in some of the most resourced city council districts that have highly educated, maybe even, you know, like elite educated staff workers who are helping manage it, and community volunteers who are involved in it, many key parts of the participatory budgeting process are done offline, like they're done around a table. So the technology within console for certain sort of decision making and commenting and voting isn't desired or even used because it's not seen as valuable. So to me, the sort of the design question is, and this is one of the things that we're trying to be much more clear about on the participatory budgeting work here, is to intentionally acknowledge that there's an offline online weaving that has to go back and forth, and that it may be that an online utopia is actually fundamentally incorrect, because that is not how humans work. So that opens up or brings questions of shift and emphasis not to mention the issues I brought up before of how decentralization means one thing to sort of right-wing libertarian folks, of which a lot of what the blockchain community is attracting and where it came from, versus the socialist communitarian orientation and what we mean by local decision making and local control and that sort of decentralization. Those, we're talking about the same words, but they go in very, very different directions.
Yeah, I'm very much in agreement. So I really think this is also about finding the right, the right use cases, when it's really, when does it make sense to store value on chain, and when this is entirely ridiculous because all it's needed is a conversation, right? To being able to understand which situation requires what format. This is also, that is for me, that's part of that learning process as well.
Fantastic. So what started with the intention of a 20-minute conversation is now running into its 47th minute with 28 participants. So we are quite underway here with our first chat. So thank you so much, Ela, for starting this. And it's really, I think it's been interesting also. So I think for many of you, you can take away a lot of the links that we shared here as well, and that Ela shared and others, and the introductions. And I hope that there will also be cross connections among you, so that you get in touch with each other. And I hope that you tune in for the next event. And yeah, stay in touch. I think Michael wanted to add a few things as well.
Yeah, thanks, Trevor. I just wanted to briefly mention, I put in the chat box the Twitter announcement for our November 26th call with Mickey Metz. So if you guys wanted to register for that, you can do that now. We hope to see you all there. And then also, if you have suggestions for future speakers, just write to us and let us know, and we can try to get them on a call and organize that, because we want these calls to be really productive and impactful and interesting. So interesting for the people on it. So, and then I also just wanted to mention that we are sending out a save the date for our 2019 annual conference, already planning ahead. And that will be November 7th through 9th here in New York City. So mark that in your calendars, and we hope that you will be able to join us then.
Okay.
And
I
thank
also
you so
want
much,
to thank
Ela.
you. It's been a pleasure, and I really appreciated all your questions and comments. Thanks for the invitation, Trevor and Michael, and I wish you lots of success for the continuation of the series. I think it's a fantastic idea. Thanks so much.
Cool. All right. Well, we look forward to seeing everyone on November 26th. And
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.